Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Jonathan here with another Vectorworks tutorial. Today we're going to look at the exciting world of freeform 3D modeling using NURBS. Now we created these amazing visuals in no time at all on this wonderful tutorial. So I'm going to show you, if you've not used NURBS modeling before, you'll realize how freeform and flexible they are. So here's a couple of forms that I was just playing with when I was kind of like messing around and just sort of making this initial tutorial. And basically, I'm going to show you how you can use the power of NURBS modeling to create incredibly curvaceous freeform shapes. So just make sure that in your Vectorworks preferences, we can do things like turn the rulers off and show our internal origin there. And basically, I'm going to kind of get started with the Polyline tool. Number 5 is the keyboard shortcut for this. And you'll notice that basically what we can do with the Polyline tool is essentially draw a mixture of straight lines and of course some really nice free-flowing curves. The real trick here is to use the U key to cycle across to that fourth mode and make sure you're using the radius art mode. And you'll notice that the curves really flow very nicely into one another if you do that. Okay, so here is my very first curve. So in a moment, we're going to just copy that and basically I'm going to convert that into a NURBS curve. Now with the NURBS curve, this means it has a three-dimensional placement, and in a moment you'll see how we can work with this. So I've just copied in and pasted in place the other curve that I did before I converted to NURBS. And you'll notice the nice thing about this one is we can now kind of do a bit of reshaping on it. So let's sort of click onto that curve and just make sure you get the right one. And basically we can do a little bit of kind of offsetting or reshaping. So basically that means that we've now got two curves that we can loft. Do remember though, before you try to loft them together, you must convert them both to NURBS surfaces. Okay, so now we've got the Vectorworks lofting tool, and you can see that I can preview how that's actually going to look to create a really nice sort of curvaceous surface. We can actually keep the original curves as well, which is quite useful for later on, as you'll see. Okay, so one of my next favorite tools, of course, is the shelling tool. What this does is creates a three-dimensional offset process. So it means that you can give these walls a nice sort of 300 thickness, as you can see. And already we've got something that was quite complicated to make in other methods as well. Okay, so what I've decided to do is basically just offset that curve a certain distance. So now we've got these kind of like two walls, and I'm going to spin one of them around 180 degrees. So what I'm going to do is basically just colour those surfaces up for a second. Now, in order so that I can see the original curves, I'm going to use my brilliant visibility tool, number 7 on my workspace, just so I can see those original curves. Next up, we're going to basically loft the base surface and also the roof surface. So you can see that I've been able to kind of now loft in essentially what's going to make a floor and also the walls as well. Okay, great. So now we're kind of ready. Now let's start the process with the thicknessing, the shelling tool. So this will allow us to shell both inside and outside as required. So simply select onto the tool and basically make sure that you click the direction for the shell, either inside or outside. Okay, so we've done our floor, we've done our roof. Now let's do the same process with the walls. But at this time, I might decide I want to kind of like play with some textures. So of course, I'm going to go to my wonderful texture packs that I make on my website and just try out a couple of really nice textures just to get a feel for how that would look. Now, one of the really nice things about my textures is basically they bring the class with them as well. So if you do want to be organized, you just copy the cubes from my texture file and bring them in. Okay, great. So we've got a couple of nice concrete surfaces. We can play around very easily with the scale of those textures as well, but I'm pretty happy for now. Okay, so next up, I'm going to go to my shell tool and give these walls a really nice sort of 500 shell. What it makes sure is that you select all the faces before you click shell, and you can see we've now got that wonderful thickness there. Let's do the same thing on this one. And again, suddenly this is starting to come together. You can see those thicknesses of walls look really, really good. Now, I think I'm just going to move the roof down a little bit, select all of those, and I want to subtract solid using the roof so that I can basically get rid of those angled bits of the shape there as well. And then I can basically paste the roof back in. So all I need to do there is basically just hide those other models for a bit. And let's basically just offset the edges a tiny bit just to kind of give ourselves a really nice little tool which basically offsets our edge inside, just to kind of like refine this roof. Now you can see I can punch in a negative value as well. So let's type in a sort of negative 2 meters. And you can see that basically, let's go negative 1 meter, actually push out 1 meter. Okay, so let's do that on the other side as well. So we'll get the offset edge tool, we'll select our edge, we'll just pull that down a little bit, and then we'll pull the edge out, say 1 meter, to get that nice little roof overhang there as well. So this kind of new tool for offset edge modeling is very, very powerful indeed. Now I'm going to go to another favorite tool, the extracting tool. But before I do that, I'm just going to drag on some different materials. So let's just see how this would look with some nice sort of metal cladding. And I think that looks really good. Some nice sort of copper kind of cladding on the roof. Let's scale that up a bit as well. So do remember, my wonderful texture packs are all available on the website store. And, you know, there's lots of libraries that I have now for sale, which do save you an absolute ton of time. They're very high quality and tileable, seamless textures as well. Okay, great. So another tool that you may not have used is one called the taper face tool. So what this tool does, you can see it's a very nice tool that it will basically enable me to select the edge. In this case, I'm holding down the Alt key to get the back face, so that I can basically select the bottom edge, so that I can now taper that angle out, say, let's go 45 degrees, or minus 60 degrees rather, just to create a nice little tapered edge to my roof. One thing you've got to bear in mind with the taper tool, it is a slightly destructive tool in that it destroys the history and things become generic solids. I'll talk about that more maybe later in the video, but basically this is something you've just got to be aware of. Once you have used the taper tool, you do not have access to the normal level of history that you do with freeform modeling. One of the things I love about Vectorworks is the flexibility to combine these different tools. Okay, so we're making really nice progress. Let's have a look at the next couple of moves we're going to make. If you hold the B key down in Vectorworks, you'll get this X-ray view, which is a very, very useful effect. This means that we can see through the model and actually basically put things in the right place, even when we can't actually get the full visibility of those sort of positions. So you can see that I'm just adding a couple of circles in here at the moment. I'm just going to make this one a little bit smaller by double clicking and editing the extrude. What we're going to do is basically select all of those plus the roof, and I'm going to go to model and do a solid subtraction. So this means I can basically subtract those elements very easily. And now what I want to do is do a bit of tapering on this roof face, just to make this a little bit more interesting in terms of sort of making these into almost like a little hole with a kind of like an angled cone. So you can see that I can angle both in or out. It doesn't really matter for this exercise, really just to show you how flexible this taper face tool is. Okay, so next up, I'm going to go for my wall tool, and I'd like to put some walls in at the end. So at the beginning, I'm going to start off with just a glazed wall. And you should be able to see that I've just got that glazed wall there. Let's just pull that in a little bit here. And here's a really nice command if you don't know this one. Basically, let's just offset it inside ever so slightly. And what I'm going to do is basically use it to fit to objects. So basically I can constrain that polygon to essentially those walls rather to fit to the roof there. So now what's really nice is I can just select my glazed wall, if you like, and replace it with one of the walls from my library. Again, these are one of the libraries that I sell on my website, and I've got loads of different wall types in there. So you can see using that curtain wall tool has been a very effective way. Let's just click that and sort of move that back in a little bit, just to kind of quickly create those nice curtain walls for the end of my building here. Now the curtain wall tool is actually pretty flexible. So in a minute, I'll do a bit more work on that. Okay, so I'd like to do a little bit of work on this roof here. So I'm just going to draw a circle and just offset that inside and outside. Basically, I can select those two shapes then and basically clip surface them. Now let's go forward and just extrude that up, say 300 mil. I can extrude this a little bit here to keep my glass. So I'm going to go through and just make a new class called glazing. And basically, we've already got some glass in there, so I can select the glazing material from there. Using the eyedropper tool, I can easily match that to the other material for the roof as well. So it's pretty quick. I can actually now kind of copy that across And basically, let's just scale that middle one down a little bit so it's the right size. So already my roof has come together rather nicely. Okay, so here we are going to do a bit more work onto the curtain wall as promised. So basically the first thing I'm going to do is basically use my mullion tool to see if I can kind of reshape this mullion. It can be a bit fiddly, so do make sure you kind of select the right mullion, and you can see that I've been able to kind of remove those. That means now that I can right click and insert a door panel. So for my front door, I'm going to go maybe for a kind of 3-panel door. And basically I can now double click, go into the leaf and change this, of course, to glazed. So this is looking really good. Let's make up a new doors class. I like to use the Howden's textures. They have a really nice range of materials, just so I get that nice sort of black frame there. And basically with the curtain wall tool, I can actually do the same thing. So what I've decided is I'll move the old curtain wall and basically put the new one there with the doors in as well. So this is looking really, really nice. Okay, so next up, I'm going to use my extraction tool. I want to extract the original curve again, because I want to make some openings in this wall. So what I'm going to do is basically draw a shape, do a basically duplicate along the path, but using the tangent to the path, you'll see that the shape actually rotates rather nicely as well. So this means I can now basically select all of those shapes, perhaps with the wand tool. I can extrude them up, say 3 meters there. And what I'm now going to do, of course, is use the solid subtraction to basically ask those shapes to subtract from the model. Now I noticed that a couple of them weren't quite sort of poking in enough, so I can of course double click, move them in a little bit, just sort of slide them back on the axis there, just so they completely punch the holes in the right spot. So this is very easy if you want to be super flexible. Okay, now here's a really nice command. If I go into the history, I can copy both of them, and this time I can click the command to intersect them. So I just want to kind of do a little bit of more work on these. I've decided I'm going to shell them. Okay, so by shelling them, now when I do the intersection, let's just move them up a little bit just so they completely intersect the volume of that kind of concrete wall, if you like. So watch this. So when we select them all, and basically let's just change the extrusion thickness there, so it's only 100 mil. So now when I subtract them, or rather intersect them, what I essentially get is the frames, the window frames that I'm looking for. So if I just put those in a nice kind of class, give them a really nice sort of black texture, you'll see immediately now I've got those frames, okay, and I just need to just do one more little thing. Rather than going outside, I needed to go inside. But you can see that level of flexibility in Vectorworks is pretty substantial. This time though, I'm also just going to move those up as well, just to match the hole to where I've got the window. But I think you'll agree, all I'm really doing here is doing solid subtractions, but also intersections. Okay, so it's looking good so far. It's time to do a little bit more work on the structure itself. You can see that I've actually kind of put in a window on that other side in a similar way, just using a solid subtraction to the ones we did on the front side. Okay, so I want to work on the site a little bit more now. So I'm going to go for sort of kind of circular site here. Let's just sort of come out and see how big we want that to be. And we'll give it a decent size. I'm going to extrude it down -3 meters, just so we've got a bit of depth to play with. And you'll see some of the tools that I'm about to use to sculpt the site here. Okay, so let's go to the resources and we'll search for some grass. We can then have a look at how we can sculpt our site to make it a bit more interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn on the automatic plane. And basically, let's draw a kind of circular shape here. I think we'll extrude this down. Let's go -1 meter and let's take that and subtract it into the site. Okay, great. So now let's go to our taper face. Do remember to select your anchoring face, i.e. the top or the bottom, and that means that we can then anchor in or taper in or out as required. So we've got a nice little kind of form now. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is basically use my filleting tool just to kind of soften and round off this edge as if it was a sort of landscape form. And finally, I'm going to use my extraction tool just to extract a circle, which I'm going to make a little bit bigger so that I can extrude this for some water in my pond. Fantastic. So we'll go and search for a water texture. You will find some water textures in Vectorworks, but you know, sometimes it's better to kind of make your own kind of textures for this kind of thing as well. Okay, fantastic. So I just want to make a copy of that circle and paste in place. The reason being so that I can offset it out a little bit, and then basically I can use my offset to clip surface so that I can basically extrude a nice little kind of like path. And we'll just put it into the front view and drag that down. And let's go and find some nice kind of paving material or some decking perhaps. We'll basically search for some nice material that we can put onto that model. Now, here's some of my texture packs once again, and you can see they really do save up and speed a lot of time. So I've got that really nice decking straight away without having to kind of create that texture each time. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is put some sort of nice sculpted terraces in on the site. So this is actually very easy to do, not necessarily using the site modeling. Site modeling in Vectorworks is unbelievable, and it's something that I really love doing. But just watch how I kind of achieve this with the sculpting of the site. So just before I do that, I'm just going to kind of extract a surface around the base plane. And again, once again, the reason I'm doing this is just so I can kind of like extrude this down, move it in the front view there, and then maybe just look for some nice materials, some paving or something like that, that I can apply just so we've got a bit of border around the perimeter here. So I'm going to go for some nice sort of limestone tiles, and I can just drag and drop those to apply them. Very easy. You'll notice that I've also got that original plane inside. So if I do want to, I could extrude that up a little bit and keep that as a flooring material. So let's go to my wood floor. I really like sort of herringbone floor like this. I think that looks cool. If I double click it, basically I can just go to my plan view and I can sort of just offset it inside a little bit. And that means that obviously it isn't kind of coming out of the building itself. Okay, right, let's get into some site sculpting. So first of all, I'm just going to basically create a really nice sort of curvaceous form and split that surface. So it is important that I basically get to the edge and click. Now what I can do is click and basically push and pull and subtract down. I'm not quite sure what happened with that funny little feature there, but I don't mind. Let's carry on. So you can see, just make sure that you kind of split the two surfaces, and then that means you can kind of create these wonderful terraces, essentially, very, very dynamically with your sort of lovely curved shapes. So it's starting to look a bit more interesting. Let's get into my fillet tool, and let's be a fairly good radius fillet. So you can see by radiusing these fillets, I can then, if I want to, go in and click the modify menu so that I can apply it to all of those sort of terraces as well. Now, I quite like that little curve there, so we'll leave that as a little kind of feature on the site anyway. Okay, great. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to kind of go into our library pack, and I've got a really nice library of trees and plants. Of course, we always need these when we're doing projects. So I'm going to go into my library itself, and you can see there's all sorts of sort of symbols available in here. Some of these are based on the VB plants and things like that I've done a bit of work and processed on as well. So you can see I like to create these lovely visual libraries where I kind of collect together plants and trees and kind of vegetation and things that I might use on my different projects. So, you know, having them in resources is one thing, but being able to open them in a file and just immediately see the plan and the 3D preview is amazing. So it means that I can visually choose and check the plants that I want. And now I can go into my project and just copy them. Now, personally, I just find this so much easier than sort of using the resource manager to search bit by bit for the kind of ones I'm looking for. So having pre-selected and created these libraries, I use them all the time. And these are again available on the store if you're interested. Okay, so you can see this really kind of starts to bring the plan form to life. Holding down the Alt key, I can just basically copy these wherever I want to. And, you know, to be honest, they look pretty good. So these are really nice sort of low polygon, but very, very good quality 2D and 3D versions of plants. Let's go back and get a couple more plants, or trees rather. So I think I'm going to go for some bigger trees here and a couple more plants as well. Let's once again just show how quick this is, just to copy, click over to the side, maybe just to paste them to begin with. And let's just sort of start to kind of move those into my project. So those I thought were lilies, they're not actually. So we'll kind of put them around the perimeter there. Okay, but you can see how fast and fluid this is. Really kind of starts to come together. And it, you know, this kind of process of sort of adding some entourage to your projects, I think it's an important one. It gives a sort of sense of scale, a sense of context, and sort of that natural and kind of architectural form, you know, merging together to make a much more interesting visual. Okay, fantastic. So let's basically just offset this a little bit wider. And what I'm going to do here is just extrude it a bit less. So let's pull it down once again to the ground level. So of course we do need a bit of soil for our plants to grow in. So I'm just going to basically pull this in a tiny bit using my clip tool. So just double click. That means I can use my clip tool. The wonderful clip tool that hardly anybody knows how to use properly is one that I always teach when I'm training, and people are unbelievably amazed by how amazing this tool is and the kind of things that you can do with it, like adding, clipping, so on, very, very rapidly. Well, everybody, I really hope you've enjoyed part 1 of this tutorial. Now, if you can't wait for part 2, I've already uploaded the full video on my members site over on the other side of the channel. We'll also be releasing the actual file there. So, of course, this means that you can access some of the people, trees, textures as well as part of that as well. So do check out my memberships, and I look forward to you joining up if you would like to find out a bit more about that. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So just before we carry on looking at the amazing new features in Vectorworks 2025, I just wanted to reach out to you and offer my teaching and training services that I offer all over the world via Zoom. I'm an experienced architect with over 20 years experience, but I've been a Vectorworks user my entire career, and I really love teaching people from small practices to individuals, whatever level you currently are. I can help you on 2D, 3D, BIM, or various visualization workflows. I also really love teaching Vectorworks in combination with things like Twinmotion, Enscape and D5 Render for 3D visualization. So wherever you are in the world, if you'd like to reach out and improve your Vectorworks skills, please book a call or drop me an email, and I'll be very, very pleased to help. I look forward to hearing from you soon.